Hello and welcome to the Joe Ligato Show. I'm your host, Dr. Joe Ligato, and we're going to be continuing our series analyzing this article uh, on Sinification.com on why Chinese democracy is better than Western democracy. We've talked about how performative Western democracy is. We've talked about various quantitative metrics to show that Chinese democracy is better than Western democracy. Things like people's optimism about the future, people's satisfaction with the government, voter turnout in the West. We've talked about life expectancy increasing in China and decreasing in America. We've talked about drug overdose deaths in the West. We've talked about rail infrastructure. Pretty much everything you could think of, we've talked about in terms of just across the board, China just beating the United States in terms of having a functional democracy. And today we're going to get to what I think is probably the most interesting aspect of this article, and it is how different governments derive their success. And in the West, particularly America, they derive their success from stoking divisions both within their nation and abroad. And China cares about consensus building. They care about creating a harmonious society. And so they do the opposite. And this is why the American system and the Chinese system really can't get along while China is rising, because America needs to stoke divisions. And so the fact that China is creating a harmonious society, is doing things that benefit nations all across the world, such as the Belt and Road Initiative, that is concerning to America, because America can't win in that type of system. It just simply can't. And that's why you see that America and China they're breaking off communications with each other, because China knows that the communication that the United States is giving to China is just performative in nature. There's no actual substance behind it, that America, no matter what, is going to be fomenting a war and fomenting revolution in China, because they need to remove win-win cooperation, because that is the kryptonite to the American system. Okay, so we see here, the sixth question is, does democracy seek to build consensus or stoke divisions? And Western democracy stokes divisions. Eastern Chinese democracy builds consensus. And it's based off of their way of conducting themselves in the world. Western-style democracy was originally a mechanism to find a compromise between divergent interests and ideas. Competitive elections provided a mechanism for temporary compromise between different competing factions. At the same time, many coordination mechanisms were put in place based on a system of separations of power and of checks and balances. And so this is a competitive system. It's meant to be hostile. You're meant to fight with each other. However, one manifestation of the deterioration of Western democracy that we have observed in recent years has been the increasing difficulty for it to bridge such divides. So if you have people competing and being hostile towards each other in a winner-take-all system, then it creates grudges. It's an iterative process where if you screw someone over, later on, they're not going to want to work with you, right? And so the Western system has created a system where people aren't willing to build bridges and cooperate, because it goes against the entire way the system is structured, the entire benefit system, the reward system for the system as a whole. And you see this, there's this really interesting graph. I believe I went over it in one of my videos, where it shows the communication between Democrat and Republicans in Congress. And you see that over time, people are communicating less and less with each other, and these tribal lines are forming. And that's because of the fact that the Western form of democracy does create division. It does stoke tensions. The first indicator of this is the prevalence of the veto politics, where decision-making processes are riddled with veto points, and politicians veto simply for the sake of vetoing, engage in fruitless discussions, make decisions without implementing them, argue endlessly over a single policy issue, and often find themselves stuck in a political deadlock. So that's essentially every issue in America at this point. It's constantly a political deadlock. Nothing really gets solved. Nothing gets done. The second indicator of this is the polarization of party ideology. So you see that people are becoming more extreme on the left and right. Particularly on the left, they've been showing that there's more of a push to the left and right. There's less overlap between Democrats and Republicans. Previously, it was thought that the two party system would converge towards the center and would strive to win over median voters, but political developments in the US in recent years have shown that polarizing ideological struggles and conflicts between the two parties are becoming increasingly pronounced. So it's not getting better over time. I mean, if it was a bad system now, but it was getting better over time, maybe we could say, just give it some time and it'll work out. But it's not getting better. It's getting worse over time. And we're seeing that across pretty much every metric at this point. And so we have to say, is this a system worth salvaging? How do we salvage it? And if it's not worth salvaging, or it's not salvageable, what do we do? And right now, there's no real answer in Western society. The rich people who control the system, they will just flee. I mean, they've done this before when Europe was in flames during World War II and to a certain extent World War I. They just left for America. So you have to be concerned because the people making the decisions right now, the majority of the decisions, they don't care about if the decisions lead to a necessarily good outcome for everyone because they could just pick up and leave at the end of this. The third indicator is the problem of policy flip-flopping. When different political parties take power, as George Washington pointed out in his day, party politics is merely the temporary domination of one faction over another, is dictatorship taken in turns. Today, this problem is even more pronounced. Change in political party at the top has resulted in policies constantly shifting back and forth between left and right. Okay, somewhat agree with this, somewhat disagree. What ends up happening is, because politics is an iterative game, diplomacy is an iterative game, you'll have maybe, let's say, a Democrat, as an example, in office, they screw over another country, and then what ends up happening is, during the next election, another Democrat takes over, or another Republican takes over, and they say, hey, listen, we changed our party because we were upset that they screwed you over, so this is the Democratic candidate winning. So you can just forget this past person screwing you over, because we're not going to screw you over. And then they screw you over again. Or if a Republican takes over, it's like, hey, listen, this Democrat was in office and they lost the election because they screwed over your country. Now we're in office and we're not going to screw over your country. And so this other country says, oh, okay, well, yeah, we trust you now because you're a different person. You either reform the party that screwed us over, or you're the opposite party, the opposing party. And so we're going to trust you. And what ends up happening is, no matter if it's the Republicans or Democrats, or if it's a new Democrat or new Republican, they just screw people over. They screw their own voters over. They screw other countries over. And so other countries like Russia and China have wised up to this fact. They wised up to the fact that you can't actually trust America, because if they make an agreement, they will go back on that agreement with the next politician. And they know that they're going to do that. That's how the system is meant to function. It's meant to reset trust, where America can do something selfish, not cooperate, and then someone else takes over and you just reset trust because it's a democracy. And these other countries have wised up to the fact that America uses democracies in this way, and so they just don't trust America. If someone screws them over and it's an American politician, they say, we know that there's a deep state. We know that there's unelected officials that decide on all of you politicians. And so the face may change, but it's still the same underlying politicians, and we know that you're just going to screw us over again if we trust you again. And so for trust and cooperation in an iterative game where you just have multiple different rounds of it, and I would recommend reading something about game theory to understand this to a certain extent, but in an iterative game, you have to be able to rely on past information, past experience with the party, with the individual, with the group, in order to make decisions about the future. The way America uses democracy, they try to pretend like you can't use the past in order to make decisions about the future trustworthiness of the nation. And so that flip-flopping, it's, I would say, performative. It's not actual flip-flopping. At the end of the day, they're still going to foment war against Russia and China, because at the end of the day, the unelected officials who control America want that, right? When George Bush Jr. pursued his ABC, anything but Clinton policy, this meant doing anything but what Bill Clinton had been doing. After Trump took office, he completely reversed Obama's policies, but has likewise reversed most of Trump's policies. Not really. I think I would disagree with this, because they flip-flop on things that don't matter, but then on things that are consequential, like foreign policy, they always do the same thing. They always foment war with other countries. They always foment ethnic divisions, religious divisions, gender divisions within the nation. They always give money to Israel. So like, no matter how you look at it, the really substantive policies of a nation don't actually change between governments. It's really just a few really non-important policies that actually change between administrations. And other countries have wised up to this fact. So I disagree with that last section. Chinese democratic policies is a consensus finding process. Although China's 1.4 billion people have diverse interests and ideas, they are unanimous about the general direction of pursuing national rejuvenation and people's happiness. The relationship between the Communist Party of China and China's democratic parties is not a competitive or confrontational one. So they're focused on building a harmonious society. We know that. Okay, let's see. Rather, it is a collaborative relationship in which different actors take part and provide their opinions in the policy-making process, but do not act as veto players. Okay, so essentially, I consider this kind of the House Slytherin type of way of doing things, where the decisions are made behind the scenes, and you don't see infighting. It's like the voters are the children, and the political parties, the people within the political parties are the parents. If you have disagreements with your significant other, you don't air that in front of your children. It's not appropriate to do that. You do that behind the scenes, and then you form a unified front in public and as well in front of your children, things like that. And so that's what the Chinese government does. It's what I call the House Slytherin policy, where if they have competitions, disagreements within the party, within the governmental structure, that's handled behind the scenes. And once things become public, there's already a consensus formed and people form a united front. And that stops people from being publicly humiliated if their position loses in some way, shape, or form, or if one person really wanted a particular policy and the policy ends up flopping after it's implemented. It stops that public humiliation aspect, and it stops grudges from being formed. The policies can be implemented without creating further division in the country. And I think that's a very effective way of doing things. So it's collaborative, actors take part, policymaking. The goal is not to restrain, but to make policies better through democratic discussions and consultations. Different groups seek to find the greatest common divisor and sketch out concentric circles. A change of leadership is not about flip-flopping, but about the passing of a relay button. So passing of the torch from one leader to another. So it's succession planning, and that makes a lot of sense. I mean, we know from other types of organizations should have a coherent, intentional succession planning strategy. One after the other, successive governments continue to run forward and get things done. This has enabled us to persist in advancing the goal of socialist modernization throughout our 100-year history. Okay. Let's see what it says. A single flower does not make spring, while 100 flowers in full bloom spring to the garden. Okay. As uses Ming Dynasty for several speeches. Okay. I don't care about that. In humanity's search for democracy, different nations and ethnic groups will provide their own answers. They do not need to copy the so-called standard answer from the West. Okay, so I talk about this a lot, how modernization can occur, which is the development of new technologies, being cutting edge in terms of science and technology. That type of modernization of the country can occur without the westernization of the country, so becoming culturally westernized. So implementing Western-style democracy, which we've talked about here, that's not necessary for building a functioning country, is what China is saying here. By comparing democratic systems with one another, we are certainly not trying to show that China's whole process democracy is perfect, because it's an iterative process. It's supposed to improve over time, so it's obviously not perfect. However, Chinese-style democracy still faces numerous challenges and has many shortcomings. However, we must start by strengthening our confidence in our system. And I think they have a lot to be confident about, because we can clearly see here that the system is functioning particularly well, right? As Marx said in his day, here is the one rose, here dance. At the same time, we must continuously advance the construction of our whole process people's democracy. We must unceasingly raise our level of democracy and its quality. So he goes off to say, let the flower of democracy in China bloom even more colorfully. Let the light of Chinese democracy shine even brighter, so that China can help mankind transcend its narrow, superficial, and inferior view of democracy, and contribute to the building of a better, higher quality form of democracy for humanity in the 21st century. Okay, so that is the end of this. So really interesting stuff. Talking about stoking division. There's no other section. Okay. I thought there was another section here. But yeah, that's everything for this article. All right, let me just check. I'm in reader view right now. Oh, okay. So that was that last paragraph was the end of the article. So yeah, I mean, I personally think, and I think there's enough quantitative metrics to support this, that the Chinese form of democracy, the substance of it, the functions of it, it just seems to work better than American democracy. I mean, no matter what metric you're looking at, we've talked about a number of them across this video series. It seems like Chinese democracy is just working. And here's the thing: even if it wasn't working, which I think it is working, even if it wasn't working, it's not America's business to dictate how democracy is done in other countries. I mean, I think that's a form of intellectual colonialism to say that you can dictate how democracy looks in other countries, particularly when you have to get the log out of your own eye before you get the like toothpick out of someone else's eye, because American democracy is just not working. Voter turnout's low. People are frustrated with it. People are not optimistic about the future. Satisfaction's low. I mean, what right does America have to lecture others at this point in time when American democracy is just not functioning? Anyways, I know that I get lower viewer count for these multi-part videos, and I understand why, because people have to sit with you for multiple videos, but I really enjoy making these multi-part videos. They're really interesting to me. I learn a lot just from doing them. And I like that there are a number of people who stick with me throughout all these different videos and watch them. So if you're one of those people who watched all the videos, please leave a comment. If you're just watching some of the videos, I appreciate you, and I hope you choose to go back and watch some of the other videos as well, because really interesting stuff. We are trying to just understand the world. The world is changing at a really rapid rate right now, and we have to figure out, how do we build a functioning society? How do we continue civilization going forward? And I think these types of videos that really dive deep into things, they help with that. They help us understand things to a much larger degree. I also enjoy making the shorter videos that are like one-off videos as well. But yeah, just let me know what you think. Leave a comment in the comment section. I always read them. I try to respond whenever I can. I have a backlog of things I want to respond to. Please like this video as well. It helps us in the algorithm, and subscribe to our channel. I'm really grateful for all the people that have already subscribed and all the views we have. We have tens of thousands of views so far on our videos, and it's just very exciting. I've gotten more attention, more engagement with my content creation than I ever did as a professor. And so it's really interesting to just see how much more I can do, how much more I can engage with people, how much more intellectual discussions I can have through the medium of content creation versus being an academic. So just exciting times, and thank you for sticking with us throughout all of this. And I hope you have a good rest of your day. That's the end of the video. Bye.